Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to The Discriminating Gamer, the board game review show that just found out where babies come from. And I'm so embarrassed. Ladies and gentlemen, today we're going to take a look at Talon from GMT Games. In Talon from GMT Games, 2 to 6 players are going to take on the roles of either the Terrans, the Earthlings defending their systems, or the evil Talon aliens, which are coming to claim it. Evil, it's morally ambiguous. Anyway, ladies and gentlemen, the game it takes place on a board, and you have very large hexes represent your different spaceships. They're about yay big, so these are pretty good size hexes. The hexes on the board are pretty good size. So it's not these little tiny wargame shit squares. It's good size hexes that your ships represent. Now what's interesting here is each ship is going to have a power curve you're going to select about every round, and this power curve essentially is your available power, your movement, and kind of your turn radius. So you're going to keep track of these stats with a dry erase marker. Now, 2 dry erase markers come with this game. Now, the game plays out with an impulse system. Not so much turns as impulses, because the way you take your turns very much depends on kind of that power curve I mentioned. First of all, you have your available power. Now, that power means it's going to trigger on whatever numbers come up during that impulse. Your movement number, it means you're going to move on whatever number comes up during that impulse. Now, your turn radius means when you can turn after you move. So if your turn radius is 2, once you move or set that power, you then have to go ahead and put a little marker, 2 hexes in front of you, so that as you move to it, once you get there, that's when you can turn again. You can't turn before, because again, these are big, giant capital ships in space. They can't make these little funky, quick movements. They're slow, they're lumbering, and they take a while to get where they're going, and inertia means they have to keep going straight before they can make another turn. Now, you start the game with your power curve set, and then you go through the impulses. The impulses are A, B, C, D, E, and F. And on the different letters, as I say, they will have different numbers that will trigger. They'll have the different numbers there. So every impulse, one player is going to have initiative. It's usually the Talon player, but it can change. Now what you do is every impulse, you look and you see, okay, is my power or my movement affected this impulse? If it is, you go ahead and you take an available action, which I'll explain in a moment, or you can move. Now movement is always 1 in the direction you're facing. If you can turn, you turn, and then you take a movement. You can only ever take 1 action per turn. And what that means is that if your power number is 3 and a 3 activates, you don't get to take 3 actions, you just get 1 action. It just activates on the 3. And there's lots of different things you can do. For instance, you can attempt to change or defend the initiative. If you have initiative, you might want to put defense tokens on your ships. If you want to change initiative, you might want to put change tokens on your ships. If the change tokens exceed the defend tokens, the initiative changes from one side to the other. You're going to have different weapons and weapon groups, and they've got red and yellow charges. They have to be completely charged in order to fire. Now, you can't charge the red sections until the power phase, but what you can do is you can spend an action to go ahead and charge the yellow. Then that will help to prepare your ships to fire again once they've already fired. Now, human ships also have batteries. They can charge batteries, meaning they can take an action with a charged battery even on a impulse where they normally wouldn't get to take one. That can be very helpful at times. Now, some Talon ships also have afterburners that let them move on turns where they wouldn't normally move. Usually they can only do that once or twice, though. You can also reinforce a shield arc. So you have various shield arcs around you. You've got, of course, the front, the sides, the rear, and what you can do is essentially, they've only got so many spots. Maybe, depending on how the ship is, you may just have 1 shield there, you may have a whole lot of shields there. But if you reinforce a specific shield, you take a marker, you place it there. The marker has the letter of the impulse you're taking it, and that's only going to be there for 1 full round. So the next time you hit that specific letter again, you remove it, if it hasn't already been shot off you before then. You can also prepare for a slip side, meaning you put a little token on your ship so that during the movement, your next movement phase, you can essentially move forward but to a side with the hexes. That also can be very useful when maneuvering. There's a few other little things you can do as well, but those are some of the basic actions. Now, after you've taken your actions, then you do movement, and then you can always fire. If someone is in your firing arc and you want to take that shot, you can go ahead. You look at what kind of weapon you're firing, and then you consult a table. Now, the table is going to tell you essentially kind of the distance, the range, and what number you have to hit in order to inflict so much damage. It's very tricky. Sometimes some of these weapons don't inflict a lot, so you got to keep pounding people, but they can be very deadly under the right circumstances. Now, as you go through all the impulses, eventually you're going to reach the power phase. Now, what the power phase is in initiative order, you're going to go ahead and select a new power curve for all your ships. You can reset it. You can try to make it work so your power, your movement will activate on different impulses. Then you can also charge a red square in your weapons box. Again, that's crucial if you want to be able to fire that weapon again. If the red boxes are already full, you can go ahead and charge a yellow box. Now, during combat, too, one thing that can happen is if a ship is hit past its shield points, the ship starts taking hull damage. Once you start taking hull damage, eventually that can affect your power. It can reduce some of your available power, reducing the number there, meaning your number will come up less likely during the impulses. Or also, you can take critical damage. You roll a couple of dice, you see what specific effect occurs. Maybe, some of your ship's systems don't work, you lose a weapons group or something else. Bad things are going to happen if you take those critical hits. So both fleets are going through the impulses, they are getting their available power, they are moving, they are fighting, they're firing their weapons, and then, of course, they're going to the power phase where they're recharging, they are selecting their new power curves. So this goes on and on and on until one side or the other is eliminated. Now, there's also rules for a campaign game in which some ships may retreat so that they can come back and fight again another day. So that is just a brief overview of the rules of Talon. There's a lot more going on here, but it's not so much that it's overly complicated. It's all pretty straightforward. For instance, there are things like missiles and rules for missiles. There's fighters, there's space stations, there's asteroids, there's nebulae. There's all sorts of other little things in this game. And the various ships, from scouts to huge battle cruisers, really feel very differently as you play them and as you move them. There's different rules for the different ships in how they move and how they act as well. So I have to tell you, about 2 or 3 years ago, GMT Games, I was reading something on their website about 3 games they were developing. These 3 games were Churchill, Triumph and Tragedy, and Talon. And all 3 of these games really sounded interesting to me. Churchill and Triumph and Tragedy, I both loved. I've reviewed them. Late last year, I reviewed them. They're both very good World War II era games, very different World War II era games. Now, why I was interested in Talon is because it is by the designer of Space Empires 4X, which is in one of my top 10 games of all time. I really enjoy Space Empires 4X. It's a 4X, obviously, game of conquest. You've got these fleets. I love the combat system in the game. I love the exploration in the game. It was a good, solid space war game that I really, really enjoyed. Maybe someday I will do a review of that, hopefully. I really like Space Empires quite a bit. Talon is not only by the same designer, but supposedly you can actually integrate this game. There's rules on it. I've read them a little bit. I really haven't gotten too much into that, and frankly, I don't know if I will. But you can integrate this game. So you take the kind of the epic strategic game of Space Empires 4X, and then you can kind of minimize. You can kind of focus into some of these battles with the Talon ship. So that right there, I think, is a very, very cool way you can play this game if that's something you want to do. But for these reasons, I was very interested in Talon. Extremely interested in Talon. And, whenever I get really psyched up for a game like Talon, there comes a moment, usually before I play it, sometimes not until I have the game box in my hand, when I think to myself, this game cannot be as good as I'm making it up in my mind to be. I've been burned before. Well, I got this game and I played it. And I played some multiplayer games. I played the 2-player. And I have to tell you, after playing this game a few times, I freaking love it. Talon is awesome. Talon blows me away. Trifecta GMT Games, Churchill, Triumph and Tragedy, Talon are all freaking amazing games. I love Talon. I love it. It really really does a great job of giving you a space combat capital ship battle game. And it does it really well. It does it smartly. You feel like you got these big lumbering ships. Now, having said that, there's two games that the Talon really reminds me of. The first one, maybe quite obviously, is Star Wars Armada. Star Wars Armada is a miniatures game, and the way those ships lumber and move, and you've got shields on certain sides, and you can do different actions. It feels very similar in that respect to Armada. Where Talon bests Armada, however, is in the way that where Armada can take a good amount of time to set up and take down, Talon takes literally 5 minutes to set up and 5 minutes to take down. You don't have that long setup and takedown time. Now, certainly, Star Wars Armada's got the cool miniatures, and it's got the Star Wars IP, which I love, and I love Armada. But man, Talon it's just okay. There's no glitz, there's no glamour of the miniatures. It's just a solid war game. And the way you're keeping track of information with the dry erase is really cool, really fun. I really, really like that. I think this is just a super solid game. Second game that Talon reminds me of is Leviathans. Leviathans, again, kind of has some miniatures, but they're on a board. They've got hexes, and it really reminds me of that because the way your firing arcs work is very similar to Leviathans, and also, too, the way you're using dry erase markers is very similar to the way you use them in Leviathans, in some respects. I mean, obviously, you're keeping track of the whole ship on these big cards. Here, you're just doing it on the actual counters themselves, but still, it's very similar in that respect as well. So it really reminds me of Leviathans and Star Wars Armada. But Talon is very, very, very much its own game. Talon is, like I say, the variety of ships and their different abilities, and the ways you can always discover new strategies and new things about how to use certain ships. It's really, really cool and interesting. It's really, really, really fun. I don't know that I can say much more about Talon other than I freaking love it. And I can't wait to play it again. And I'm learning more and more stuff to love about it. I haven't played with nearly all the rules. I haven't played the campaign game. I'm kind of at a point in my life where I'm not a fan of really playing campaigns because I just don't have the time. And I play so many games that I review constantly. Frankly, I get a little bored. I'm just not a fan of campaign games right now. But, for just fun scenario games and stuff, man, I really like Talon. GMT is just knocking it out of the park lately, so congratulations, GMT. This game is phenomenal. So the recommendation for the discriminating gamer for Talon unequivocally is buy it. Thank you once again for joining us today on The Discriminating Gamer. As always, we ask you to please leave a comment for us on YouTube, on Board Game Geek, on our Facebook page, or on thediscriminatinggamer.com. We ask you to please like us on Facebook and subscribe to us on YouTube and follow us on Twitter. We are The Discriminating Gamer, and it is my fond hope that one day I'll be playing Talon, minding my own business with my friends, and some aliens will say, "That kid shows strategic genius. We need him in our war against those evil guys who have invaded our homeworld. Beam him up and make him our fleet admiral and give him lots of women." I don't know. Sorry. Please somebody help me on my feet again, and I don't know where I'm going, and I don't know where I've been. Please somebody help me on the solid ground. It's a long time, and I'll be dying. Once a year I wind up in the band.
And out the left arc, still a 2-6.
Yes!
A little scout.
Yes!